Welcome to Lesson 3D. Remember, over the next few lessons, when we see the number 3 and the letter, we're going to be learning about specific muscles. This lesson we're focused on the pectoralis muscle, the fly motion to work it out while isolating it, and the pressing motion to incorporate the triceps muscle into a pectoralis movement. The pectoralis muscle is your chest, and the pectoralis has two muscles within it. There's the pectoralis major, which covers most of the chest, and then the pectoralis minor, which is the small muscle underneath it. The pectoralis is a big muscle, and when people talk about working out the pectoralis, they talk about working out at different angles in order to be able to work the different parts of the chest. The left part of the picture here in black is a bench press, and you can see how you can change the angles of the bench press. When you work at the top angle of the bench, you're working on an incline, and that helps fill out the top part of the chest. When you work off of a bench at a flat angle, you work the middle part of your chest. And when you work on the bottom angle, the decline, you're focusing on the bottom part of your chest. So when you go into a gym, you'll notice there are benches set up to move and there are benches that are set in place. But now you know why there are all the different angles. Let's start with the best way to isolate the pectoralis, and the movement is called a fly. In a fly, your arms stay extended throughout the motion. If you take a look at the image, you notice that the bench is set on an incline, which means that this person is working the top part of their chest. When you're at this high of an incline, you can't help but work the front part of your deltoids as well. The part of this image that has the darkest color red is the part of the muscle that is working the hardest. The lighter shade is also working, but not quite as hard. When you bring down the angle from an incline to a flat bench, you end up working the whole chest, but the focus is on the center part of your pectoralis. Again, notice the part that is colored with the darkest red. That's the part that's working the hardest. When you change the bench angle down to a decline, you notice that the part of the chest that is colored the deepest red is the bottom part of the chest. That's the part that's working the hardest. Now we're going to transition from a fly motion to a pressing motion, and I want to show you the difference. Notice how wide the arms are at the bottom end of the lift. He's stretching his arms as wide as he can to get as much stretch in his chest as possible. That's the difference of the bottom end of a fly movement. In comparison, take a look at the bottom end of the pressing movement. Arms are bent, and he's going to use his pectoralis and his tricep to press up. It gives him a lot more power. You're going to notice that your pressing movements seem a lot stronger than your fly movements. Once we change from a fly motion to a pressing motion, you notice how the triceps get involved. Notice the deep dark color in the triceps as well as the chest in this picture. So we've got the same concept as when you're working the flies. The only difference is when you do a pressing motion, your triceps are involved. So when working on an incline press, you're working the top part of your chest as well as your triceps. And just like before, because you're working from a decline, you're working the bottom part of your chest. But because it's a pressing motion, your triceps are involved. And if you remember from our last video, Anytime we go from a bent arm to a straight arm, you're doing an extension. And in this case, when you're doing a pressing movement and your arm goes from bent to straight, you're also working your tricep muscles. The last pressing concept that I want to touch on is how you grip the bar. The closer you grip the bar, the more triceps are involved in your pressing movement. The wider you grip the bar, the more pectoralis is involved in your pressing movement. And it's a progressive thing. It's still more chest than tricep, but the closer in you go, the more tricep gets involved. The wider you go, the more pectoralis gets involved. I am finally done with all the finer points of a fly movement or a pressing movement. Now we can move on to the different ways you can actually lift your chest. There's a lot of variety in lifting, as I've said before. We've already talked about the dumbbells. We've gone over various benches and barbells. Don't forget, you can always do movements with kettlebells. There are various cages with high cables and low cables that are great for pectoralis work. There are many interesting machines, cages, and benches that you can find in weight rooms. Don't forget about resistance bands. A lot easier and cheaper than joining a gym. And all the simple, old school ways that you can work your chest just by pushing off of the ground. All these exercises that you've seen to work your pectoralis are all good. You just have to remember that variety in your exercises is the best way to work out. And don't forget the importance of stretching. Here are some images of good ways to stretch your chest. The key to stretching your pectoralis well is knowing how to make that pectoralis muscle as long as possible. Using towels or bands work. You can swing your arms around. You can stretch your muscles by yourself, leaning against a wall. Or you can partner up with someone and have them help you. Sometimes people even use a chair. Don't forget to take the quiz. See you next time.